Saturn Cube Theory Explained, Part 9, The False Light, the Archons, and the Trap of Enlightenment. By this point in the series, you can feel how the story evolves. At first, Saturn is a symbol, then Saturn becomes a system, then the system becomes a lifestyle, then the lifestyle becomes a spiritual crisis. And now we reach the part that makes people argue, because it touches the most dangerous terrain of all, spiritual ego, the trap of feeling awake while becoming more trapped. Part 9 is about the false light. Because in conspiracy mythology, the greatest prison is not the one that looks like a prison. The greatest prison is the one that looks like awakening. This is why so many people describe the Saturn Cube theory as both thrilling and exhausting. It feels like you are seeing behind the curtain. It feels like you are finally naming the grid. But the moment a person feels special for seeing it, the cage quietly tightens. Because a cage can be built out of pride just as easily as fear. And in this worldview, that is exactly what the Archons want, not just your obedience, your identity as someone who knows. So let us define the Archons in the way conspiracy storytelling uses them. The Archons are not only beings, they are a type of influence, a parasitic intelligence that feeds on distortion. They feed on fear, yes, but they also feed on division. And nothing divides people faster than the feeling of being more awake than others. So Part 9 begins with a simple observation. Some people discover the Saturn Cube theory and it helps them reclaim their life. They go outside, they unplug, they pray, they stop worshiping the system. But some people discover the Saturn Cube theory and it makes them mean. They become contemptuous. They become addicted to exposure. They cannot stop arguing. They cannot stop warning. They cannot stop seeing enemies. And in that state, even if they are factually correct about some things, they are spiritually trapped, because their mind is now a battlefield that never sleeps. So the question becomes, how do you tell the difference between true illumination and a counterfeit? Because not everything that feels like light is light. Sometimes it is just intensity. Sometimes it is just adrenaline. Sometimes it is just dopamine. Sometimes it is just the nervous system getting hooked on conflict. This is the trap of enlightenment, not the desire to understand, the desire to feel superior, the desire to feel protected by being right. So Part 9 is about a specific kind of false light, the kind that offers revelation without transformation. Because true spiritual knowledge changes you. It makes you softer, not harder. It makes you more honest, not more performative. It makes you more grounded, not more frantic. It makes you more compassionate, not more contemptuous. So here's the core idea. In the Saturn Cube theory, the system is a prison, but the system has a defense mechanism. If you begin to see the prison, it offers you a new identity, a new role, a new costume, the awakened one. And if you take that costume, you may never actually leave the prison. You will just pace inside it with a torch, feeling important, feeling chosen, feeling above the sleepers. And that is why this theory is so psychologically potent. Because it gives people meaning. It gives people a role in a cosmic war, and that can be healthy, or it can be weaponized. Because when people feel powerless in everyday life, the fantasy of being spiritually elite becomes intoxicating. It becomes a substitute for healing, a substitute for humility, a substitute for the slow work of becoming whole. So how does the false light operate? It has 3 signatures. First, it inflates you. It whispers, "You are rare. You see what others cannot. You are not like them." Second, it isolates you. It makes you suspicious of everyone. It makes you withdraw into the rabbit hole. It makes you feel alone and misunderstood. Third, it hardens you. It makes you cruel in the name of truth. It makes you lose empathy. It makes you lose patience. It makes you forget that human beings are fragile. And here is where the Archons return in this series. Because in the mythology, the Archons feed on that. They feed on your isolation. They feed on your arrogance. They feed on your hostility. They feed on your despair. The Archons do not care if you believe in them. They care if you are producing the emotional fuel. So Part 9 is not just a caution. It is a key for anyone who wants to talk about conspiracies without becoming spiritually sick. You can explore the theory, you can analyze the symbols, you can entertain the possibility, but you have to watch your inner state. Because the inner state is the true battleground. If your inner state becomes full of rage and superiority, then the theory has eaten you. even if the theory is correct. So what is the alternative? Discernment. Discernment is the ability to look without being swallowed. In this series, discernment is the opposite of obsession. Discernment is slow, it is humble, it can hold uncertainty without panicking, it can say I do not know without collapsing, it can say maybe without becoming fanatic. And most importantly, discernment does not destroy your humanity. So now we tie this back to the symbolism you are building. The cube is containment. The cross is unfolding. The cross breaks the cube. But in part 9, the cross also breaks spiritual pride. Because the cross is not a symbol of being elite, it is a symbol of surrender. It is a symbol of humility. It is a symbol that says, you do not free yourself by becoming superior. You free yourself by becoming truthful. And truth without humility is not truth. It is propaganda, even if it is self-propaganda. So part 9 brings in a different layer of the Jesus story. If you are framing the cross as the cube unfolded, then you also have to frame the crucifixion as the destruction of the ego. Because in Christian theology, the message is not become smarter than everyone. The message is die to the false self. The false self is the self that needs to be superior to feel safe. The false self is the self that cannot admit weakness. The false self is the self that builds identity out of being right. And in conspiracy culture, that false self is everywhere because it is tempting, it feels like armor, but it is also a prison. So part 9 proposes this. The Archons do not only trap people through ignorance, they trap people through counterfeit awakening. Because once you are trapped in a superior identity, you are still manageable. You still react, you still argue, you still burn your life away on screens, you just do it with a halo. And the halo is the deception. So part 9 ends with a test. Ask yourself, what does this knowledge produce in me? Does it produce love? Does it produce courage? Does it produce presence? Does it produce humility? Or does it produce hatred, paranoia, and contempt? If it produces hatred, it is not liberating. It is another cage. So in the Saturn cube mythos, the false light is a trap, but the true light is simple. The true light returns you to life, to your body, to nature, to prayer, to honesty, to meaningful relationships, to real action, not endless decoding, because decoding without living is just another grid. And if you want to escape the cube, you cannot do it by becoming a symbol hunter who never rests. You do it by becoming a person whose attention cannot be owned. So part 9 is the warning. The cage will offer you a crown. Do not take it, because the crown is often another cube in disguise.